Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Poe's Magic Academy. I am so excited to introduce my good friend and colleague here. Peter Samelson is joining us this evening. Peter, of course, is a notoriously uh,
I like that
wonderful,
term. I like
that's
that
right,
term a lot. Notorious is
notoriously
great.
wonderful magician. Who's he's a creator, a developer, and one of the most superb performers I know. He adds a grace and an elegance to the art of prestidigitation that very few people are able to equal, if any at all. And so it's great to have. I hope I didn't talk you up too much.
Oh yeah, it's like never introduce somebody to be really. Hey, you're gonna love this guy. He is so funny. It's like he is just so funny.
Well, I didn't brag about your humor. I was talking about your
Well,
magic.
good
So
idea.
yeah. But I like to thank you so much for being here this evening. People are already in the comments saying hi to us. We have 8 people watching so far.
Oh,
It
great.
usually picks up the further we go into it. But thank you so much, Peter, for coming here this evening.
It's my pleasure, Vince, because you have done so much. I was so thrilled when you invited me down to Baltimore to be part of Pose Magic. It was a real thrill to be there and to be sort of in on the ground floor of you establishing a brand new venue and getting things going. Your industry and your creativity are really remarkable.
oh,
You do so much really wonderful work, and you provide a venue for performers to come in and to try material and develop material and present things they've worked on for a long time. And it's remarkable. I think we all owe you a deep debt of gratitude. So thank you very
Peter,
much.
you're gonna make me cry.
Oh,
Thank you.
my
I
pleasure.
appreciate
It's
it.
true. It's
Yeah, why
true.
did yeah, why it just shows about you, but thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it.
Well, that's that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that, but part of it being about me is my experiences of the kind of places I perform, and I think that that's part of our discussion tonight is to talk about, you know, um, the venue. We're now in a situation where we are not working live; we're working virtually. Um, but I don't think that that's going to last forever. I think we're going to come back to a time when we are actually working live and virtually, hopefully. Um, it will permit those of us who travel, especially those of us that have been traveling for a long time, to try to travel a little more locally. And I think that's one of the things that's been so great about just before we went into the shutdown was seeing all this proliferation of new, smaller venues where people are actually making a go of things and trying to do things. Um, and you're one of those places that's really, is on the rise up, and and I look forward to being down with you again, hopefully in the near future.
Oh, we got a message from our friend David Parr.
You would like to have me get my volume up? Okay, easy to do, David. 1 second, I can do that.
And apparently I'm
Uh,
too loud.
oh, you're too loud. I can definitely raise my volume, and let me just see if I can cam mic. Let's just check audio here. I'm up all the way here on my audio. So let me just try it again here. I can push it up a little bit more.
Yeah, Peter. Oh, I can hear you just fine, but I guess yeah, Peter. Hello, Peter, and everyone watching. This is from our local magician Dave Philman, who I was just left a
Oh yeah.
news for. Yep, I think you
Hi
met him
Dave.
when you're. Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Do I sound less overwhelming? I hope. Yeah. So
I
this will be
hear you
the this.
fine.
Hopefully, this is not the most exciting part of the show as we go. But yep, it's been a crazy this past year, which we're out of. It's hard to talk about it like it's over. I got to be perfectly honest with you. It's like I'm still getting used to the idea that I can't say please be over 2020 because it is over, and I think we are. It's time to be optimistic again. There's 2021 from what everything I'm reading, and I'm sure you've been looking at similar articles and things like that. It looks like halfway through the year, we might be going to some semblance um, of normalcy. So so that is looking positive. The vaccines are rolling out. A mask policy is actually going into effect, and hopefully, virtual shows will carry us through till then. So, and it's like David Parr, who's watching with us tonight. He would say that if you have the opportunity to do a virtual show, you should do it. Give it a chance. Try it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's right. There's so many opportunities, and there's so many magicians who are doing a good job with it now. It was off to a rough start at first, but I think we're moving into a better position now. There's a lot of good magicians out there who are ready to help and loan a hand, and and materials out there for you to learn from. So,
right, exactly. Well, we can do a check-in with David to find out if the volume is at a better level at this point.
That's right.
Let's see if he's willing to.
David, how are things in the booth? Can you hear us better?
Exactly, David. Check. Testing 1 2 1 2. 7 years ago, our forefathers brought forth from this continent a new nation. Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere on the 18th of April in 75. Hardly a man is still alive who remembers that fateful day and year when he said goodnight with muffled oar rowed across the Charleston shore, where, swinging wide at her moorings, lay
So Peter,
Somerset.
You're going to put on your best Blackstone senior impression, I think.
Yeah. I'd worked on memorizing that when I was in 6th grade.
Yeah, so David says you're still a little low. So,
I'm still a little low?
Yeah.
You want me to raise my energy level and my volume? Okay, I'll push it up. Let's try that. There's a little bit more volume for you. Hopefully that's better.
Oh, that is better on my side anyway.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Like I said, you could always put on your best Blackstone impression. Remember, it was all about projection.
Oh, I can definitely project. You want loud? I can. No. Let's just have our conversation here. But yes, absolutely.
All right. So we can hear you, and that's fine. And I'm recording on my side. This will be up later on. So I'm sure they'll be able to hear you in a superior fashion at a later date. Well, anyway, let's move on with our interview today. So today we have Peter Samelson on, who's one of the best card magicians, but also one of the most graceful and elegant magicians I know. And I do want to kind of open up with that.
Oh, okay.
So when as you remember, one of my Vince should use his indoor voice, but
we'll fix it in post.
Yeah, we'll fix it in post. But one of the things I specifically asked you to perform at Pose, of course, was body snatchers. One of my favorite routines that you do, and of course, as a science fiction fan, which I believe you are as well. That was a wonderful piece that I'm a huge fan of. And one of the things I appreciate about your style of magic is that you bring an elegance to it. You have graceful movements when you perform. A lot of magicians can do, and there's other magicians, of course, who do your routine, with your permission, and I'm sure there's a few that do it without your permission. But anyway, there's what helped you develop that style? Was it natural for you, or did it come over a period? Did you deliberately go in that direction using you have some theatrical experience after all?
Yeah, there's I have a long history of training for theater and for movement. Excuse me. It goes back to the time it goes all the way back, to my early education and things. I mean, up through high school, I was playing music. So the idea of things being lyrical or musical, the idea of structure, of having there be an arc or shape to both the movement and the performance and the routine itself was natural to me because of the musical background that I had. I also did uh, theater when I was younger, and starting in junior high school and going up through high school, and I was also doing magic back then. I think I really developed the style of magic that I did later when I realized that it needed to be more theatrical. I think that's, in the beginning there was this sense of it's all about the tricks, and I think that's what happens when we're young. We start thinking about things that way, and so it's absolutely natural, which kind of reminds me of a point that Tamariz made in one of the lectures that I was able to attend of his, and he talked about the moment at the end of a performance or the end of a routine when a magician uh, moves from the end of that routine into the beginning of the next one. And he talks about realizing the moment when he caught himself finishing a routine, turning around, turning his back on the audience, and getting himself set up, and then coming back to perform the next one. And he recounts a story of picking up a present for his son. He was, I guess, separated from his wife, and wrapping the present in a box, and then wrapping it again, and then wrapping it a third time, and taking it to her to give to his son. And it got to the door, and she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, he's asleep. I'll give it to him in the morning." And Juan said, "No, no, no, you have to wake him up. I need to be here when you give it to him, when he opens it." And this process of opening it and then seeing the delight, that he realized that in magic, you really need to take this moment at the end of a routine to realize you've just given a present to the audience. And you need to be able to stand there and take a moment to take in and watch them enjoying what you've just done and appreciate that. And I realized that in thinking about that much of the reason that we run through at the end of a routine and go to the next is that as kids, we get caught. It's hard for us to um, feel confident enough that we can stand there and look at an audience and really see if they're enjoying it or not, because originally we knew they were thinking about, oh, well, I saw him, I didn't, it's like, oh, that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that once you get to a certain level of proficiency, you can take that moment to really pay attention to your audience's reaction without fear. And that does two things. And that one of the things it does is it allows you um, to really pay attention to their response and their reactions without it being a judgment on you. And what that lets you do is think about how you've made changes in that routine and whether or not you need to, because they will tell you whether or not they like what they're seeing and which things are working. So this idea of this fluidity of motion and the sort of what you were talking about where this all began, which is how do you get to that point of finding the elegance or finding the way to wrap what you're doing in a package that's going to be delightful for them, that they're going to want to open. And I think that comes and starts from the fact that we get past the fear and get to the point where you really pay attention to what the audience is experiencing. That's a long way to get there, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. I've always been meaning to ask you about that. How do you got to that point where everything is so rehearsed? It's so, but it seems so natural. You don't make it look mechanical, which is, I think, a problem that a lot of especially when it comes to card magic. Um,
I
you
know one of
rehearse.
the things that we were talking about this before, where you were sort of looking at the handling that I use, for example, on body snatchers. Well,
Mhm.
we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I've developed a new presentation, not a new presentation, but a new handling with some minor changes in the script on this as well. And the new handling is not easy. It's a step up for me, and I've had to work very hard for it to become second nature. And
Yeah,
that's
that broke my brain.
good.
The I mean, as you know, and we've talked about it before. We're purely for test keeping our brains active, that sort of thing. You sometimes you analyze other magicians, if not to
Yeah.
copy them, but just to have to keep yourself sharp. And I have some David Parr and a few other friends and yourself, are able to analyze other magicians and work through what they were doing to just for the for that purpose, to keep your mind sharp in that regard. When I saw your presentation, I liked your original version just because of the beauty of it and this the sci-fi variant. But the when I saw the new version, my mind was broken. I struggled. I could not figure out how you did it. I'll be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's funny you mentioned that, but it's going to get a national audience. Uh, Thank you, Mr. Parr. Uh, that it's going to get a national audience, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But yeah, I've just started. I'm getting to the point where I can actually perform that, and that's the difference between practice and rehearsal and performance, right? So. Uh, the question is, how do you develop a script, right? How do you find a script, or how do you develop a presentation? Because the script is not just the words. The script is the beats and the tempo and the rhythm in how you do what you do. Uh, and there's this part of this which is the technical part, and that's the practice, and that's hours and hours of just repetition of finding things. And what you find sometimes is that there are demands on the presentation, on the handling, that force you into doing a particular tempo or rhythm at certain parts of the performance. And you can push yourself. For example, there may be times where you feel like you need to set for a move. Well, maybe you need to practice that a little bit more so that it doesn't require a set, that it can flow from one beat to the next without taking that pause as you get ready for it. And maybe that's because that pause draws attention to that in a way that you don't want it to be done. So that's where the practice part of it comes through, where you figure all that stuff out, get it into your body memory. And then there's the rehearsal, which is where you start doing it at a rhythm and a tempo and with sort of the presentational energy that you're going to have when you perform it. And then you perform it. So those are really three distinct parts of it. And as David was glad that that point made sense to him, which is that this idea that you pay attention to your audience, that your audience will tell you a lot in developing your presentation. So uh, there was a question raised that went back and forth between Eugene Berger and Richard Kaufman many years ago, which I called the patter debate. And the idea behind this is when you come upon a new bit of magic that somebody else has created, for example, how do you use their pattern and presentation, or do you write your own? And my answer to that is it's not a simple answer. It's a process. And the recommendation that I have is that it's multiple step. The first thing you do is when you've learned it, you learn it as the creator developed it. And you present it that way and pay attention to your audience as to how they respond to it. And then go back and present it again, perform it again with no patter, no presentation, just the physical actions of this to see how people react to certain visual points to it. You know, what is the inherent visceral reaction to the magic, the physical magic? And then there's this point where you try adding your own presentation on it. So first do it with a script as written by the author, do it with no script and pay attention to it. Then try and add some presentational aspects of your own to it and pay attention to it. And then go back to the original presentation and see how the reactions are different with that original presentation compared to your own. And what you might discover is that the original creator was really clever. That part of what they had done was they had found a way to enhance the innate or visceral reactions to the magic by their choice of script. And you in your own presentation may have missed that. Because inherent in every bit of magic is an essence that is about something, right? So, and if you can discover what that essence is, what that quality is, or what that imagery brings you to, then you can improve your effect by enhancing that imagery or embracing that imagery. And I'll give you a real quick example without performing it, which is the Gypsy Thread. Noah Levine, who's a brilliant young performer and magician who's been doing his own show called Magic After Hours, was doing it at Tannen's and now is starting to do it virtually as well. I highly recommend his work. Got in touch with me once because he'd been attending a lecture, a neurological lecture on psychology. And these neuroscientists had used a video of my performance of Heartstrings in the presentation. And they showed it with script and then showed it without script and talked about how people reacted differently to it and whether or not it was more powerful with or without. And their decision was it was more powerful with the script. And I like to think that that's true and call upon my friend Jay Tormey, who's no longer with us, who passed away December 31st many years ago, who was a professional mime who, when he left that as Boston's pocket mime theater, when he left that profession, went into writing ad copy. So went from no words to all words. And I asked him, I said, when you write your pieces for the mime company, which he often wrote many of them, I said, how do you do that? He said, it's like haiku. You put two things next to each other and let the audience make the connections. So the scripts are not meant to be, the magic is not meant to be an illustration of a script, but it's meant to be imagery, right? That's parallel, and that the two are meant to complement each other, not where you're illustrating it. So, and not where, and where you are also not narrating the actions. Yes, that's correct, Dave. Right. Yeah. No, you're never, sometimes you'll freeze a script. And Picasso talks about the fact that, artwork is never finished. It's just abandoned. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So anyway, those are kind of, that's still getting back to your same question of, what's the process of how do you get there on that? And part of that was framed for me. I've talked about this before, which is I was a conscientious objector during the Vietnam War, but I started out with a 2S deferment, I was, because of the lottery, I was never called up to work as in that format. Um, but I really realized that with all the magic that I was doing, that it sort of felt, hmm, I felt it was all about just fooling people. That's all. That's the only thing I wanted people to do, is to walk away going, God, I had no idea how that works. Boy, that just, wow. I love not knowing how this stuff works. And I realized that, there was a part of me that wanted people to walk away from a show enriched about the world, more understanding more about the world, not accepting that they don't understand stuff. That if we don't understand stuff, the magic is just the medium, right? I don't want people to embrace not knowing. I want them to embrace experiencing and knowing and understanding more about the world, not less about it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what led me. Again, these are different bricks that go. And speaking of bricks, wind me up, set me down. I'll just keep going. Speaking of bricks, it's like I talk about what the role of magic is, and I talk about the fact that there's it's like when we're born, we're walking, and magic is all around us. And as we grow older, we're walking down a roadway, and as we grow older, these walls get built up around us. These walls and everything inside the walls is possible and real, and everything outside is impossible and can't happen. And what magic does is it pulls a brick out of the wall and lets a little bit of that impossibility, that little bit of insanity, creep into your pathway for just a little while, before you continue on. Uh, and so that's another image that sort of sticks around in my brain as well.
I think, yeah, I agree with you on every point you made as far as the, putting in ideas together, adjusting and, reimagining pattern. Some people have created wonderful works where their pattern just fits within the effect that you're trying to accomplish. And other times it's better to rewrite it because it becomes more sincere when it's your own words. Sincerity is very important when it comes to a performance. It's I like that David say ghost, by the way, just a white outline. His picture doesn't
Yeah,
show
you're
up in
right,
there.
Vince. You're absolutely right. Sincerity is pretty essential, and it allows. Yeah, if we all think about those times when we would open up Tarbell. We talk about when I was 6. I've just come back from China, and my visit to the Orient has left me with. It's like the patter was. If you were an international performer and you actually traveling, cruising, and doing that sort of stuff, yeah, maybe you were there. But as a 16-year-old, not very likely.
No.
We need to talk about things that matter to us and that are, as you said, are honest and genuine and sincere. Yeah.
Yeah. See the, some of the, of course, I put a lot of emphasis on storytelling and narrative
Mm-hmm.
and that sort of thing, and never doing a show where the words "and for my next trick" come up in your performance.
Yeah.
uh, but you uh, um, structure your shows and you understand the importance of narrative. Even if it's just a few lines that introduce a childhood memory, which we got to.
Hey, Jeff. Hi. Girardot. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Uh, so that's great. Yeah, exactly.
You want to elaborate
That
on that?
and no, that and don't chew the furniture. Don't chew up the scenery.
Mm.
Uh, you know, learn your lines and don't knock things over.
Like a soap opera set. But
Exactly.
so moving on a little bit. So once again, one of my favorite effects you do, not only for the the science fiction spin, and also because of the beauty that you put into it, is the is body snatchers. As is what you call it, and named after the movie and that sort of thing. And I just want to throw up this like a teaser image very quickly to get people excited, um, if that's okay.
Oh yes. Oh, look at that. Yes. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I, we
It looks like Fools.
that's right. Yes, it does look like Fullest. In fact, I think this gives it away a little bit more. Unless that's really good photoshopping, I would think that it's you're going to have a Fullest appearance very soon, if I'm not correct, if I'm not incorrect.
It's actually going to be airing on Friday, the 8th of January. So this Friday. Yeah.
Yeah, one day
Yeah.
before my birthday, actually.
Oh, how great is that? How
Yeah.
great is that? Yeah.
So I think it's kind of obvious which theme of the effect from those
You think?
photographs, yes,
Exactly.
that they're doing. But this is the if I'm not well. Let me let you take this part over because I'm not even sure how much we're allowed to say about it. So why don't you talk to our viewers about?
Well, I think that imagery says it all. I'll talk about it more afterwards. Um, but interesting. This is the original cover from uh, the book, Body Snatchers. Uh, and it wasn't called The Invasion of the Body Snatchers until the movie came out. And then they changed the cover of the title of the book. And because of copyright issues, um, there was a real question because one needs to be very careful on what you're using. So we couldn't use the original cover of the book for this. So my buddy Hal Myers, Damien, created a brand new cover for the book, and this idea of the spaceship. Although there is no spaceship in the story specifically, the idea of being beamed up, and so we created a brand new title. And he built the town is all built in 3D, and that was a shot of
Wow,
me that was then turned into an outline, and he built the 3D of the spaceship and the whole thing. So big thank you to Hal Myers, to Damien, for doing that. He's quite a talented guy. So yeah, and that's where you see the set of that on the background becomes part of what that was. The idea of doing that was Michael Close. Yes, there you go. Yeah,
I like the fog effect too. That is
yeah.
really
They
neat.
that was they decided to get creative because I said hey you could just have me shoot it here in New Jersey. Uh, then I don't have to travel to Las Vegas. Uh, but they said, no, we want this to be very theatrical. So I
Nice.
did. That was
Well, I saw
a delight.
they got the social distancing down and the everyone's wearing masks. So that's yep.
It's weird. It's,
Hmm.
I don't know how it's going to be covered in the broadcast. We'll find out all about that. I encourage people to watch it, obviously. Um,
Yep.
but there was no live audience during the performance. So it was odd, definitely an odd experience. And you know, the Rio was empty except for 2 floors of performers and people working on it.
Wow. Yeah.
I'll share
It's
more about this afterwards, and I'll also yeah, I'll
yeah. We're pretty much just telling everyone, please watch the
watch it
episode this Friday. Yep,
exactly.
that's right. And then we'll have Peter back at some point to discuss everything that happened afterward. So keep your fingers crossed. We're obviously not allowed to talk about the outcome, uh, but we'll in the future you'll know. So you're watching this from the past.
Exactly. We're reaching out to you in the future.
Yep.
Indeed.
Um,
It's interesting. You sort of talk about a bunch of stuff. Did you have something you wanted to jump into there, or?
oh no, go ahead.
Oh, okay, all right. So I was going to do this. No, I was going to do this. Yeah. So I was just going to, how do you get to where you are? Well, this happens to be one of the fun things that was there, which is I was working at the Magic Townhouse, and we had this lovely discussion the other day with Dick and Dorothy. And I had agents come and show up at the townhouse and said, "Hey, we'd like to have you work on a cruise." And I went, "Oh, okay." And they said, "Yeah, you'll be going from Los Angeles to Hong Kong." And I went, "Are you kidding me? You just saw me do close up." And they went, "Oh, yeah, but you do colleges, right?" I went, "Yeah." And they went, "Okay, you'll be fine." And more stories about that. But this is that was me back then, and this was on a trip where in the early '80s, the Rotterdam made one stop in Havana. So this is inside Havana, Cuba. I'd already been to Hong Kong. You can't tell, but the T-shirt I'm wearing is a Hong Kong T-shirt. Um, Guy in the main plaza in Havana shooting photographs on that box camera.
Wow.
Yeah. This was in China. This was uh, in Beijing. Yeah. And then we talked about Monday Night Magic. I'll just say one thing here that in this trip to here in China was a remarkable experience, and I actually got there before Mark Wilson. Mark and Nanny were going later in the year, and I got a chance to get in because of the ship I was picking up in Hong Kong. This was the following year; it was like 1980, and I got a chance to meet with the acrobatic troupe uh, in uh, in China, and we sat around and we did. Um, I watched the show, which was remarkable, and they did things that go bump in the night, and they did an aerial fishing where at the end the guy goes out into the audience with a short a rope, and he goes out and he throws it down into somebody's lap and pulls it up, and there's a huge fish so flapping around on it. The show was marvelous. It was absolutely marvelous acrobatic trip in Beijing. And afterwards, talking with them, I brought them some things as gifts, and they gave me two beautiful silver coins that I still have that make the most gorgeous sound when they uh, thank you when they ring together. But the translator was there, and I asked, "So, what was it like during the Cultural Revolution?" And he said, the head of the troupe said, "Well, it was interesting. We At the end of every show, we had to explain how all the magic worked because it was considered elitist to have knowledge that everybody else didn't have."
Hmm.
I said, "Oh, that must have been terrible." He said, "Well, we didn't tell the truth." So,
Oh, that's fantastic.
you know, so which I think is absolutely great. And and it was shortly after that we started doing magic for each other, and he turned to the translator and said, "Okay, you have to go now. We don't need you, and get out of here." So we then spent time doing magic for each other. And it was just lovely. It's just lovely. Yeah.
So let's
Um,
talk about Monday Night Magic a little bit. So,
okay.
like Pose, you're also doing virtual shows over
We
at
are.
Monday Night Magic, and I put a link in there. So please go check out Monday Night Magic, and they're doing virtual shows every Monday. Obviously, as the name implies, it's kind of easy to remember what time of the week it is. 8 p.m. every single Monday. So, how did you transition? How did Monday Night Magic do transitioning into virtual?
uh, when this year came up, we didn't know how long we were going to be shut down, and we were looking at this idea of, well, when are we going to get back? And we were kind of basing it on Broadway to look about when this was. And by the time the summer rolled around, and the PPP had gone through its series of weeks, Michael had been working away on this idea, uh, and had been sort of paying attention to other people. Our good friends Harrison Kramer and Patrick Davis had gotten their scam magic shows online, and I was so impressed with that, and we really loved what they were doing. I didn't want to step on their toes, and they were coming. I performed on their a spot for them on one of their shows, which was they did a fabulous job, and they basically had underlying themes that were running from week to week. And Michael had this idea of doing of transitioning to Monday Night Magic online, and we realized that it's a very difficult thing to do when you don't have a live audience, and that's one of the
Mm-hmm.
real challenges. So, like you, we ended up in StreamYard, where you can have a couple of people that are in as guests, so you can have some live reactions. And then we decided to go to Stellar. So all of the tickets are sold through Stellar. Uh, we've been offering two options. One is a ticket that would just allow people to watch the show live, and then for slightly more money, they can watch it live or see it on demand. And it stays up for a week after they purchase a ticket.
Wow.
So they get a chance to do it. And I think we're transitioning to just one ticket price. I'm not sure about this, but we've been talking about this, which allows people that if you miss the show on a Monday, if all of a sudden something comes up and you can't be there, you still get to see the show. And Stellar is an interesting platform. They have an app for your iPhone or for Android phone. They have an app for Roku and for Apple TV. So once you purchase a ticket, you can watch it on your own television. You can see it on a huge screen, and it's quite something. Um, and the format that we were trying to do is a combination of live performances, some recorded performances, and interviews to get a chance to get to know the people a little bit. And last Monday, which was last night, we had Jimmy Ichihana out of Orlando, uh, Etienne, uh, Leon Etienne, and Brian Miles from South Africa.
Hmm.
And so we've just had this fabulous show. We usually only have two artists, but we had three last night because they've been working together, and they actually met at a summer camp years ago where they were the Magic team, and this is like they're now doing their world tour. So they're a reunion tour that they're getting together to do this again, and they're doing a great job of it. And interestingly enough, in Cape Town, there's another Monday Night Magic because, as you know, uh, John Lenihan in London is the creator of Monday Night Magic.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll show you just this other thing here. So here's Monday Night Magic, and what we have here is this was our original group of crazies that decided to get together to form this thing. So that's Todd, me, Frank Brentz, Michael Chowden, Jamie Ian Swiss, and Michael had called me and said, "Would you be part of this thing?" And I said, "Absolutely." He said, "You know anybody else?" And I said, "Yeah, Jamie. Let's bring him in." And he said, "Will he talk to me?" And I went, "I don't know. Let's find out." And Todd was brought in by Jamie, and Frank is a longtime friend of Michael's, and no longer with us, unfortunately. And I had gotten to know about Frank when I was out cruising on Holland America. We were always never on the same ship, but I would follow Frank and always hear these fabulous tales about what a great job and performer he did. He had these dove act and his Where Do the Ducks Go, and he was just mentalism and mind reading. He was a wealth of knowledge. Anyway, so he was great, and then we sort of expanded. This was backstage at one of our Monday Night Magic shows, and man, I miss him. He was always, up till the very end, he was working on material. We kind of expanded. This was early Stuart Palm over on your right side, and Matt Holtzclaw, Jamie, Frank, Michael, Ossie, me, Prakash, and Todd. So we've had all sorts of great, great people throughout the years, that have done that. Ossie and Rocco's come and performed for us there. Just Allen, Great Throdini has performed for us, and of course Todd, you know. So
Yep.
and our buddies. So yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I'll give
Thanks
you
for
one. I'll
sharing
give
that.
you. I'll give you one other. This is another. We used to always go out afterwards for dinner, and this is an evening out at a Chinese restaurant. Where in this you see Simon Lovell in the background, and And obviously that's Jeff Latta in the front that's working. Uh, you know, so it's great to see this. Oh, this is another friend of ours who is working. I had this lovely gig down in Mexico, working for Danny Doyle down there, and this was down in Mexico. You never knew kind of how you were working. This is Bob Sheets working in a pool. Yep, he's actually doing linking rings, standing on a couple of tables that are built onto a tool. I never had to do that, but Bob can work anywhere. He's remarkable, and what a great creative genius he is.
Wow.
Oh, we'll talk about that later.
Secrets revealed.
Indeed. Yeah. So good. Glad you're enjoying this. Terrific. Feel free to ask questions if there's anything specific.
Yes, yeah, I did want to jump in and say that this is not a show where you have to wait until the end to ask questions. Feel free to jump in. We might not be able to get to your question right away, but we will get to it before the end. So please feel free to throw your questions out and talk to us at any point. We'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to hear about Peter's career or Monday Night Magic or what's going on with him, can't ask any more questions about Friday. I think we're done with that one. You'll have to see the follow-up interview where we talk to Peter.
We'll talk about that in detail, and I'll perform some stuff. There's a section in there that I do not do, and I'll talk about why that happened. But there's a section that I didn't do that's been that I think will fry you.
Well, I do want to play another video about that. So this is the video where I decided Pose Theater needed a vacuum cleaner. This is the effect.
Oh no!
And I had to purchase a vacuum cleaner just for this particular effect.
I remember asking you whether or not you sure you want me to do this.
Yes, I did. I 100% did. So the only performers at Pose that required the vacuum cleaner to be used was Peter Samelson and Harley Newman.
Oh, yeah. Harley's another brilliant man.
Yeah, so far. Yeah. All right, here we go. Oh, that's the picture of it. Let's get the performance.
It's been an absolute thrill for us to be here. We want to thank you for being here for this part of this thing. As a way of saying thank you, I'd like to do one last piece for you and share a thought with you. So, if you could. Thanks you, Lauren. As you go through life, at some point you'll find that you may lose some money. It happens. At some point you may find you lose a possession, like a ring. Hopefully you get it back as quickly as you did this evening. Sometimes we make friends. Drew, Megan, thank you so much. Sometimes we lose friends. Stella, I hope I haven't lost you as a friend. Thank you. But there's one thing that nobody can take from us. They're truly our most precious possession. And those are our memories. And as a way of saying thank you, I'd like to share with you one of my most precious memories. When I was a child, I used to go exploring through the house. And in my father's study, with all his mathematics and physics books, was something that always caught my eye. For on his desk, there was a paperweight. It was made out of glass so that you could see through it. And it was filled with water. Inside was a wintry scene, snow on the ground, and when you shook it up, there was a blizzard, a snowstorm. I always wanted to get inside.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. It's one of my other favorite pieces that you do. You know, I've seen other people perform Snowstorm, but that is definitely my favorite variation on it. You know,
Thank you so much. Yeah.
yeah,
Again, it's trying to find out what is the piece about, you know. And this was years ago. I'd seen Vito Lupo perform at a. Thank you, Stephanie. I'd seen Vito Lupo perform at a little club out on Long Island, and he was doing his Piro act, and he always worked in a spotlight. And one of the things he did is he did Snowstorm in the midst of that stuff with no presentation, silently on this. And I went, wow, that's just so beautiful. It's a piece I would love to do, but I don't know, how and why. And I remember sitting and working with Jamie and at the time his wife, Wendy, at the time. And we were going back and forth, and Wendy mentioned a snow globe, and I went, oh, yes. My dad had one of those, and it was sitting on his desk, and I used to play. Years later, my mom saw that after watching this, and she said, "You remember that?" And I went, "Yeah, I had the strong memory. Is it real?" And she said, "Oh yeah, absolutely, it was real. It sat on your father's desk." So the fact is that it actually it had this evocation of this memory, because we've all seen these things and been enraptured by these snow globes. Some of them are cheap and trivial and hokey, but the really nice ones are beautiful, and they just we get caught up in them in a way. So which kind of makes me think of one thing we touched on earlier, which is this idea of sincerity.
yeah, it's a real
Uh,
story.
it is a real story,
Mhm.
but there's something that happens when you're writing material that you have to be careful of, and that is that you have to make sure that it doesn't become too precious. So there's this fine line you walk between something that's personal and real and means something to you, and something that's too much for an audience. It's like too much information or too personal. So when I'm doing, for example, one of the problems I see with some people when they're working on a project is that they find the imagery that they evoke um, tends to be either too personal.
Mm.
They don't find imagery that's universal, that's experienced, that people really tap into, um, or they get to do stuff that doesn't matter to other people, that's universal but it's not important, or it just becomes too close to who they really are. And I worked with a director on creating the Thread, the Heartstrings piece. And though I don't want to perform it here, I'll give you some of the lines and talk about why those are chosen. Uh, you talked about using lines to transition into things. So the line that I always use to transition into the Heartstrings is, see, that's the great thing about magic. You get all caught up in it. You stop thinking about things that are going on out there in the real world. Things like where the car is parked and what they're doing to it right now. So you kind of intrigue people and get them into it, and then you can take them a little deeper. And I talked about it being relationships, and then I found script. The director and we spent a long time just improvising these things and then editing. And the script is, uh, I once demanded great beauty. Snap. You won't let me find out who I really am, I said. You're intellectually dull and your cooking's mundane, she said. And the reason that that is there is for exactly that reason, that laughter, because it's getting a little too personal. It's just a little obnoxious at that point. That you would say that to a woman is really not pleasant. But the fact that it gets turned around makes people laugh. And just as I watched you do this, this is what happened and what you did. You went, and then you leaned back in. And that's what happens with people emotionally too, is that if you start to give them something that's a little emotional and then you give them humor where they realize that you're not taking yourself too seriously, it opens them up to the point where they'll come back in. That same physical reaction is actually an emotional reaction, and it brings people back in to the story or into the moment in a way that's more open. So
Mhm.
you can go deeper at that point, and you can actually take it down to a point where they really experience things in a way that they normally wouldn't. But if you're just going on a straight linear progression, there's a certain point they put up a barrier. So if you can find the right point at which you sort of go, we're in this together, and I'm not scary, without saying those words, then that allows people to sort of wrap themselves up in it and come in, and they trust you in a way, and that trust is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to reveal, also, you don't want to reveal too much where it takes away this. There's a certain degree of mystique when you're up on stage. You want to give at least the
Yeah,
interpretation that you know what you're doing.
yeah,
And
it's being in control.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and
exactly. Yeah, yeah. They have to
and,
trust you.
yeah,
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 it's like it's like being in a movie. You go in to see a movie and you get caught up in it. You know, and if at some point in that movie there's a screw up, like there's a really obvious break in continuity, you know, or if there's something where clearly one of the props is fake, or a boom mic drops in and you see the mic sitting there, uh, what it does is it yanks you out of that. It yanks you out of the experience, and that's destroys the experience for an audience, that they get screwed. And for a magician, one of the problems can be if you screw up the technique, or if you are make a technique too obvious, or uh, I'm a big proponent of technique, but it doesn't have to be complicated technique. It only has to be good technique. So you don't have to bust your knuckles working on certain sleights and certain things. Just don't screw up.
hmm
You know, don't screw it up for the audience,
yeah,
because they're trusting you to give them this experience. Once you move it from it's a challenge act, where it's like, okay, you're going to catch me or not catch me, and you can't catch me. Once you move it into a situation where you're sharing an experience, or you want them to be um, carried along onto an emotional point. And I know that this works in the thread piece, because I've had a couple. I was at a bar not far from here a couple years back, and I'm sitting at the bar having a beer, and a woman walks up and said, "You're a magician, aren't you?" And I went, "Yeah, I am." And she said, "I saw you about a year ago, and you did this piece with thread, and I was just thinking about that today." And I went,
wow,
okay. So if somebody's thinking about something a year later, you know that you've tapped into something. And one time after Monday Night Magic, a woman came up afterwards, a younger woman, and there were like scars. I could see stuff. They weren't completely healed. There was something. There was still there was a red. They were a little bit, angry still. And she came up afterwards and she said, "I don't know if you meant this about when you did that thread piece." And she said, "I don't know if I can do this without being too emotional." She said, but I think that you were saying that even when things get terribly broken, they can still be put back together again, right?" And I went, "Yeah." And clearly, there was something that was happening in her life where that message really mattered to her.
Wow.
But it wasn't a message that I deliver. I mean, the lines are never. I never say, and if we could, and then we put it back together again. It's like, no, it's this idea of putting two ideas next to each other, so the thread goes back together again. And as before it goes back, I said, there are times where I wish we could take back what's been said, undo what's been done. And if we could do that in real life as easily as I do that with a piece of thread, that would be real magic.
Wow.
So you put these images and the words next to each other, and now all of a sudden you have this piece where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So it becomes this moment. Bye, Dave.
Bye, Dave.
Am I yammering on? Oh, I am yammering on.
No, well, it's usually an hour long, but we can go over a little bit if everyone's still interested in watching. That's what's important to our viewers. Do you have anything else you want to add to the evening, or?
I could expose some stuff, but I think I'll pass on that.
Well, it was fun. We did a little pre-show, bouncing ideas off of each other. That was a lot of fun. Maybe someone will see some of that at some future date from one of us.
Maybe what we'll do is I'll come back on and we'll perform some of this stuff. I'll do one thing for you. So talking about stories, would you like one thing?
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
All right. So
is that a rhetorical question?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was real. It was real. So, okay, I wasn't planning on this, but we'll do this. So, Vince. Sorry, it's a little bit. Here, I'll put a W there. So, do you know what I've just put your initials on there. Do you know what a myth is?
Yes.
Myth is a story, right? The nice thing about a myth is that it's a story that may or may not be true. As a matter of fact, it's both true and not true at the same time. Because a myth is a story that may be true speak to something true inside of ourselves, but something that is not literally true. And there's the myth of the phoenix. The phoenix is a bird imagery. Bird that is scarlet and gold and resembles a falcon or an eagle. Cheap origami. At the end of 500 years, phoenix builds a nest in a great oak tree, and it sits there very rapidly. It flaps its wings. At the end of that 500 years, it builds this nest out of rare herbs and plants in this oak tree, and it ignites its own funeral pyre by flapping its wings very rapidly until the nest catches on fire. And you're about to meet the phoenix. You see that all right? Okay. Yeah. The phoenix would burn for days and days and days till all that was left were the ashes, the embers, and the smoke that rose into the night. But that's not the end of the story. For at the end of the story, the Egyptians had the same story also. Because at the end of the story went a little bit like this. The Egyptians told the story of the phoenix, but for them it was the sun that would die at the end of every day, only to be reborn in the morning. So these are really the very first stories of resurrection and rebirth. For out of those ashes, the phoenix would rise again, unharmed, reborn, to live again for another 500 years. And that is the story of the phoenix, which I will do for you again when we meet in 500 years.
Sounds like a date.
Indeed.
Peter, thank you so much for that last piece. That was absolutely wonderful.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Yep. Well, I think that's it for our evening. But please check out Fool Us this Friday.
January
All right.
8th.
That's right, January 8th.
It's the first episode of the new season of Fool Us.
That's right.
Huzzah! Thank you.
Yeah. Yep, that's correct, and it's the and then of course on Friday and Saturday, Pose Magic is having a Dave Thoman Friday night. That's at 8 p.m. Yep. So and then so it might be a conflict of
Fool
but
Us will be online. You'll be able to see it online.
the Fool Us will be online. You can watch it later that evening probably. And then you have on Saturday, our good friend Paul Draper is stopping by Pose Magic to perform on Saturday. Excellent. Yep. And then, of course, for the magicians, there's the increasingly famous or infamous, depending on your point of view, after show Saturday night. And then on Monday, of course, Monday Night Magic. So please check that out. Go to Monday Night Magic. Was it .com? MondayNightMagic.com. That's right.
Yeah. So a quick little note for you about Monday Night Magic. So you just real quick, come and visit us or see it. You know, this might be a great vision. It'll be Ossie Wind and Derek Hughes are on. And you would ask how Monday Night Magic started. Well, one of the places that had been developing around the country is a place called Liberty Magic in Pittsburgh. And thanks, Steph. And Liberty Magic was doing this wonderful show, and a lot of people, Jeff and Tessa, I think you guys were supposed to be there and weren't there. I wasn't there, but I was supposed to be there because everything closed down. And we thought it was going to open back up again. And they started doing Liberty Magic at home. And Scott Schiller, who runs that program and works for Trust Arts, has been working with us in conjunction with Monday Night Magic, getting our online working. And so this next Monday is kind of the merging of the Liberty Magic audiences with the Monday Night Magic audiences. And so there'll be a segment from Ossie Wynn that will be completed, that began and was left hanging in the Liberty Magic and will be completed, and then Derek Hughes, who's been at Liberty Magic, will be on with us there as well.
First time I met Ozzy was at Dickens Parlor Theater in Delaware several years ago. Yep. But yeah, that sounds like definitely be there for that. Tell Ozzy I said hi, by the way.
I will.
Yep. And it's that's going to be a lot of fun. So yep, Friday is Dave Thoman, Saturday Paul Draper. Friday is also Peter on Fool Us. And then Monday, Peter, will you be there hanging out on Monday as well, or?
You won't see me, but I'll be there, and and I kind of like your post-show gathering. Maybe we'll see if we can get something like that going for those people that are there. Yeah, Jeff. Yeah, and and the Eversons are going to be on, I'm hoping.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of thank yous in here. So, but yeah, Jeff is regularly hangs out at Pose Magic.
I miss seeing those guys. They're so fabulous.
Oh, they are. They're absolutely wonderful. Yeah.
As I started this, my first comment was to compliment you on this. You have built a coterie of conjurers. There you go. A little phrasing for you. A coterie of conjurers for your little for your not your so little but your great show. Yes, Jeff, I will. He'll definitely do that. Okay. I think he's speaking from experience, is what he's talking about.
The Eversons are quite the troopers when it comes to staying up. I've hung out with them at the restaurant until 5 o'clock in the morning. So, and I think it could have gone on longer.
They're
I
on
was getting
Spanish
tired,
time.
not them. I was getting tired. So, but it's but yeah. So the real quick, just kind of conjure up there it is. The conjure up a memory from Pose was the last. Uh, if you don't mind, I would like you to share your personal story. Last physical show before the pandemic happened, like at Monday Night Magic. What was it like?
For me,
Mm-hmm.
my
Did you have a
last,
feeling that this might be for the last one for a while or not?
you know, my last set of shows. So okay, real quick.
Mm-hmm.
This 2020 started out amazing, just an amazing trip. Karen and I flew to Portugal on the 30th of December, where my friend Raymond Crow was performing as part of Impossible for Luis de Matos. And Topaz was there, and it was an amazing show. And so we flew to meet and spend New Year's Eve with Raymond and Julie, and so we did that, and then went on to Switzerland and came back to the States, and was looking forward to picking up a cruise at the beginning of March in Singapore. And Karen was going to do a week in China first. And as January rolled on, we started to realize that things weren't looking so good. And the tour company canceled the tour of China. And I kept thinking, oh, I'm not sure. Maybe I should cancel the cruise, but I hate to give that up. Maybe it'll be okay. There's only 15 cases here, and who knows? Yeah, sure. They knew. They just didn't say. And then I was down. The last show I was doing was down at House of Cards in Nashville, and Joey was so wonderful down there. And
He's such a
just
nice
great.
guy. Big fan.
He
He loves
really is
magic so much. Yeah.
just an absolutely great guy. And
Mm-hmm.
and I was scheduled to fly home, and the next day I was supposed to fly to Singapore. And I just knew it wasn't going to happen. And as February kicked off, and I flew home, and a week later, I saw Norman Beck, who just finished up a performance at MAES and was lecturing out on Long Island. And I was supposed to go in to Speakeasy Magic and work there. And then I was supposed to go in and work close up doing Monday Night Magic. And Speakeasy canceled. And I bailed on the Monday Night Magic. I just said, I am not comfortable. I'm just not comfortable. And that was the last time. So it was out on Long Island with Norman Beck and a bunch of other good friends out there for the lecture. And one of the people that I saw at that meeting, I was informed about 4 months ago, died of COVID.
Wow.
And that was the last time I saw.
Yeah.
It's real.
It was back in February for me when I realized it was going to be a while. I actually had the entertainment for. I always keep extra magic at the theater, props and that sort of thing, and in my car, of course. I'm sure most magicians do. But and we had a cancellation that night. And they were of course, can't blame them for being a little fearful about being out in the public at the time. It was at very end of February, I think, that last weekend, or maybe the first weekend of March. I don't remember exactly, but they canceled, and I was okay with that. I said, no, it's fine. I got it covered. I ended up hosting the show and doing the show, and I actually started preparing for the idea that this might be something we have to deal with. We had no idea what the process was going to be, but I was becoming aware that this might be the last show at Pose, and I performed it myself. I did an impromptu magic and mentalism show, and I wore nitrile gloves, and I had hand sanitizer available before everyone was sold out everywhere, of course. I did it, and I wouldn't pass anything out to anyone unless we were already thinking safely, like how can we do this safe way? But it didn't matter. The hotels shut down. Thankfully, they were able to work out a deal. They are real heroes, by the way. And I want to give a shout out to the Lord Baltimore Hotel for being heroes, because they're hosting people, pandemic victims, and the doctors and first responders who are handling the COVID outbreak